everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is Coast to Coast. And, of course, I am here with Stat Guy today. How's it going, man?
Lots of money, poorer, but hey, we're doing pretty good.
It's fun. Just get a tarp. Just get a tarp. It's fine.
No, not in winter. Not in winter. We're not getting no tarp.
Yep, blue tarp roof. That's what we do. That's how you keep it classy. Then you just need to stand on the front porch with a stained wife beater and a Rainier. Yep. So what? So how did you guys end up finding the mold then to trigger this?
So we had to do. So I had to do like a foundational check anyways, because we had some water that came into the house last winter. So I always get the foundation checked every winter just to make sure no more water's getting in. And our house was the only house that had no snow on. We had, I think, 9.5 or 10 inches of snow from Thursday night through Saturday morning.
Oh, okay.
And our house was one of the few houses that barely had any snow on the roof, even though we have a very pitch steep roof, so a lot of times the snow melts faster.
Sure.
But when we had the inspector come over, they made the comment that our house was losing heat somewhere, which is why so much snow was melting on the roof. So he's like, well, we'll see if there's a crack in the window somewhere, or some sort of crack on the ceiling, which is where the heat's escaping, because then if it's just a normal crack, they could just patch it.
Yep.
So they were checking my daughter's room upstairs, and they found a bunch of mold in the attic, which is obviously an occurrence from water damage getting through the roof.
Yep.
So then when they found that, they went on the roof basically directly above where her room was to see how big the leak was, if it was something that can just be patched really quick or whatever. Mm-hmm. And in the process, they found out that all the shingles on the roof are no longer sticking to the tar paper that they're supposed to be on. So basically, whenever we get wind, it ends up being a flap, so all the water just gets underneath the shingles. So now we need a new roof.
Good times. Good times. Yeah, we'll probably talk about the parade tomorrow, Chris. We got no PAGs today.
Not all of it was awesome, though.
Yeah, I mean, people got shot. That's any big gathering at this point. I mean, let's be honest. So, one of them, it was a block off the parade route. There was another one that was towards the end of the parade route. I mean, I don't know. It seems like anytime there is large, congregations of people, somebody decides they need to bring a firearm with them, or at least do something dumb, like drive through the crowd, or some sort of asinine act seems to happen anytime anything happens anymore.
Right.
But good job, people. Way to suck.
And that's eventually it's going to get to the point where teams are just not going to even want to do parades if this keeps happening, because it's supposed to be a time of celebration, not a time for people to do stupid shit.
Yeah, but I mean, the people that want to do stupid shit are just going to take advantage of the opportunity. How's it going, Wen? Yeah, no, it's unfortunate that some of those things happen, but yeah, it looked like overall the parade was pretty cool. But we'll get further into that, tomorrow when Pags is here. Yeah, and I did see this. So I think his total number is 16. So he's halfway to that Deshaun number. Man, what?
Tucker's done.
I just don't understand. I mean,
Tucker's done.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. Happy manageable Monday. Yeah, kind of.
Well, they said after the last 7 that Tucker had added on to what was already accused of him.
Yeah.
One of the ladies even said she has a long list of other people that he's done this to, and now basically they think he's going to end up with more than Deshaun Watson. And if that's the case,
so crazy.
But if that's the case, Tucker's done. There ain't no way in hell the Ravens are going to keep him, and then chances are he's given his age already. Who the heck's going to re-sign him if he gets suspended for a year? He'll be 34 going on 35.
I think the thing is if he would have had one of his all-pro years like he's had, every other year, somebody would still pick him up.
but now he's coming off the worst year of his career.
That's the thing.
And now you have to
wonder. A bad year. It's funny because the league will put up with as many like off the field distractions as long as your play is elite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of how many chances Antonio Brown got. Like that dude's brain is a bag of cats. But when his
cat litter,
elite talent, people were like, you know what? Maybe we can make it work. Soon as he wasn't quite that anymore, it's like, yeah, okay, you're gone. You know, and honestly, that's probably why I would bet Aaron Rodgers doesn't get a lot of phone calls, right? Is his last 3 seasons weren't amazing. Last one in Green Bay wasn't great. Hurt for a season. Last season, again, not awesome. And then you're going to add all of his prima donna weirdness without any of the production. There's not a lot of upside for a team to be like, hey, yeah, let me take this guy who just told the Jets, hey, you know what? I understand my contract says I got to show up to these things and I could stay on your roster if I do that and get rid of the off the field distractions. But yeah, I'm not going to do any of that, which means any next team is going to look at that and be like, oh, so you're going to be a problem. Like you've already admitted you're going to be a problem and your production is average at best.
Yeah, the funny thing is, what you just mentioned about Aaron Rodgers too, like if you look at his last 60 starts, so basically what is that, like almost 3 full seasons at that point, so his last 60 starts, sure, he actually has better numbers than Patrick Mahomes. So it's not like his play has been that bad, because over his last 60 starts, he has 119 passing touchdowns, 30 interceptions, and a 102 rating compared to Mahomes 113.
Yeah, so the problem with that is you're saying last 60 starts?
Yeah, which is basically
you're including 2 MVP seasons, which is 4 and 5 years ago.
Yeah, but even this year with the Jets, he didn't have like an Aaron Rodgers season. But
no. But you're adding years that are MVP seasons.
And Mahomes had equally good years during that stretch. He just didn't have an MVP season.
That's great, but his talent level is so far from those. Like, you'd be better off to do his last 30 starts. Let's see what those numbers look like. Because last 60 is, again, including back-to-back MVP seasons. I'm just going to go with inherently, you're pretty good when you're winning MVPs.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find his last 30 starts.
Because, his last year in Green Bay, I think they were a 9-win team. He misses all of a season ago. This last season, what did they wrap up at? The
Jets were not good this year. They were 5-12.
Were they 5? So I couldn't remember if they were 5 or 6.
I mean, his numbers weren't terrible though. Like he actually didn't play as bad as I thought he did when I looked at the end of the year.
That can be misleading though, because when you look at Russell Wilson's numbers with the Broncos, he played terribly. His numbers didn't look bad because he was opportunistic when his defense got him on the plus side of the ball, right? But if you actually watched the games that year, they couldn't sustain a drive to save their life. They were able to capitalize when they would take over in positive territory. But if they had to drive the field, they were punting. But if you look at his numbers, they looked good. Touchdown to interception was good. His yardage looked okay. But if you actually watched the games, you're like, yeah, no, he played terribly. And so, I mean, sometimes stats will give you a different look than what actually happened.
Yeah,
if you watched the Jets games, he was not great.
Yeah, the last 30 starts for Aaron Rodgers, he has 56 touchdowns, 23 picks. Last 30 starts for Mahomes, he has 56 touchdowns and 30 picks.
Sure.
So even then, like last 30 starts, Rodgers has played basically the same level as Mahomes, even slightly better depending on how you want to look at it.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, like he's still going to get phone calls. I don't think it's going to come from any playoff team or any team that's in playoff contention.
The thing that's funny is Mahomes this year was like a top 10 quarterback. He wasn't leading the league. Like he was closer to 10 than 1. Like nobody watched Mahomes this year and was like, man, killing it.
No, exactly. Like Mahomes, like he played well at the end of the season, but the first 10 weeks he was terrible.
Yeah.
But
So,
like,
I mean, the thing is you're getting a Rodgers that is playing average. Again, like I didn't say he was terrible or a scrub or anything like that. I said he was playing average. But it comes with all of the off the field stuff
yes,
that doesn't make that enticing. Because if your numbers are, Geno, Derek Carr type of numbers, then no, I don't want to deal with your I'm not showing up to practice. I'm not going to do OTAs. You're going to just randomly disappear and you take shrooms. Like I'm not dealing with all of that for average gameplay. If you are winning MVPs, yeah, I might overlook some of that stuff. But if you're just a guy, no, it's cool. Like I can get a guy that shows up all the time.
I think Tennessee, the Raiders, or the Browns. I could see the three teams taking a swing at them. Tennessee and the Raiders, especially because if Tennessee and the Raiders both draft a rookie quarterback, they may be in that position where you saw what happened with Will Levis. Raiders have seen some potential in Alex O'Connell, but not enough to be like, oh, Alex O'Connell is our guy going forward. I could see Rodgers going into that situation for 1 year and just mentoring whoever they draft.
So the problem with that is we've already seen him not willing to mentor. So why would you bring in a guy that isn't willing to mentor, that is a problem, that's average production-wise? Like, why would you do that? There's so many other bridge guys you could bring in that would be a better like teacher than Aaron Rodgers. I mean, let's just let him finish his Brett Favre arc. He can go to the Vikings. He can send some dick pics and steal some money and move on. Just finish the Brett Favre arc and let's call it a career. I don't see a team that, I mean, someone will, right? Obviously, someone will, especially a bad team probably will, to just try and get fans in the stands, right? Mm-hmm. They're like, we got Aaron Rodgers, buy tickets. Tennessee, maybe. I really don't see the Raiders doing something like that. I can't imagine Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly want to deal with a head case.
Well, see, the thing is, Tom Brady, I could see wanting it. That's the thing, because Tom Brady, knowing how Brady's always respected Rodgers a lot. And Brady has always respected his ability. And I think Tom Brady would have a lot more say and a lot more pull in a situation like that than some people would think. And I think that might be why the Raiders want him, because Brady would want it. Brady would be like, this is who I want here right now while we develop this guy.
So probably one of the bigger pulls for Rodgers to go there is Max Crosby said that he wouldn't hate that if he came, which makes it sound like maybe he wouldn't try and force his way out of there. That being said, you have a limited timetable with Pete Carroll. I don't know if he wants to deal with a potential culture killer of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is Rodgers has a tendency to throw teammates under the bus and just kind of create some bad situations that the Raiders are already not great. Like, they really don't need to also have a cancer in the building. Because, I mean, unfortunately, that's what he's become.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's why I don't think, like, all these people right now are saying, like, Minnesota.
I mean, again, Minnesota's not going to go.
Well, that's like all these people said Minnesota should, like, go get him and should make a run at him. I'm like, the culture that Kevin O'Connell created in that locker room the last couple of years, he's not going to bring one single player in that's going to ruin that culture. It doesn't matter if you're an MVP. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you're not good in the locker room, he's not going to bring you there.
Well, and the thing is you're not bringing in an MVP. You're bringing in a former MVP.
Yeah, but it was just like
is an average quarterback.
Yeah, but if it was even a situation like, if let's just say Rodgers is coming off of a season like Josh Allen had, like where he won the MVP,
Sure.
Even if he's coming off of a season where he wins the MVP, if he is still a locker room cancer, Kevin O'Connell would not bring him into that locker room knowing what he's created in that locker room.
And you shouldn't. I mean, you shouldn't bring – I don't care how talented you are.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you are a problem for the locker room, I don't want you in the building. I will take average to above average guys with a ton of heart that want to play together over a diva cancer every day of the week.
Yeah.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, like Rodgers was immensely talented, right?
He's to this day, like even to this day, and I will stand by this. When he was in his prime, and his prime was basically from the year he won the Super Bowl in 2010 to probably 2019. That was like his 9-year prime where he was. Sure.
Yeah, I can get into that.
He was the best regular season quarterback in NFL history. And those, you can look at the touchdown interception ratio, the completion percentage, everything that goes with it. I don't think there's going to be too many people that deny that he was the best regular season quarterback in NFL history. His problem was,
I mean, he was absolutely killing it.
His problem was come playoff time, he was an average quarterback at best. And that's what set Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and some of these other guys apart from Aaron Rodgers, where yes, they would consistently have good regular seasons. Like every now and then, Manning would have a great regular season. Brady would have a great regular season. But for the most part, they were consistently good during the regular season. Mm-hmm. They always played better in the playoffs when the games mattered most versus Rodgers. He tore it up in the regular season like it was nothing. He gets to the playoffs, and he's an average quarterback at best, where he'll have one good game and then 2 subpar games.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it was – a decade ago, it was the NFC Championship game was the Green Bay Invitational. It was whoever played Green Bay went to the Super Bowl is basically what it became.
And that was the game that Rodgers typically had his subpar playoff game. Like the divisional round in the wild card, he'd go out and have 7 touchdowns, 1 interception in those 2 games. NFC Championship game comes 2-3, 3-3. It's like, no, that's 3 interceptions in the NFC Championship game. Ain't going to get it done.
Yeah, no, it's funny because it's what the 49ers have become now, right? Is the NFC Championship game obviously not this year, but for the last 5 years prior to that, it was you were playing the Niners and basically whoever was playing them was going to go to the Super Bowl.
And even the year the Packers won the Super Bowl, Rodgers really did not play that well in the playoffs. He was carried by the defense. Like they beat the Chicago Bears 21-14 in the NFC Championship game. Yep. They won because B.J. Raji had a pick 6 in the fourth quarter to make that a 21-7 game. Even in the Super Bowl, Rodgers had a couple nice completions, 1 touchdown. Nick Collins had a pick 6. The Packers had like another turnover that they forced inside the Steelers' 20, which led to a touchdown. It's not like he's the one that won those games. The defense won it for him those years.
No, and I mean, even when they had a chance to go to another Super Bowl, they had the most ridiculous meltdown in the NFC Championship game against the Seahawks of any meltdown I think I've ever seen in a game. I mean, they were up 3 scores with 4 minutes to go and lost that game. That should never happen.
And then 2 years after the Super Bowl, the year that the Packers won 15-1, Rodgers had like 46 touchdowns and like 5 interceptions that year during the regular season. They went 15-1. First game of the playoffs, they see the Giants. He has 0 touchdowns and 1 interception and looks pedestrian at best. It's just like that's a prime example of a quarterback that literally just killed it the regular season, going 15-1, and then just shows up in the playoffs like, oh, I'm here, I'm going to win now, and then you don't show up when you need him to.
No, and that's the thing is, why would you give him a call? Is he can't seem to win. Right, like there's no reason to give this guy a call. He can't win in the postseason very well. He's not the MVP player that he was, and he still has all the off the field baggage that he drags with him. Like I'm not hearing the upside outside of maybe you have a dysfunctional franchise that just needs a guy to sell tickets. Maybe the Browns should get him. That would actually make a ton of sense.
That is literally why I think the Titans, Browns, and the Raiders would be the only 3 teams that would even take a swing at him, because the Browns are dysfunctional enough as you had another dysfunctional player, it ain't going to matter. The Raiders are kind of in that position where they want to sell tickets because they're in Vegas. Bringing him there makes a ton of sense. Then you have the Titans where it's like, well, we've sucked since we've had Will Levis. Why not bring in somebody else to see what can happen?
Yeah, I mean, so the Titans one, I mean, they're going to draft a guy. I don't know that you have so many holes on that team. I don't know that you even mess with bringing in a bridge guy, because why? Um, or if you do, you go and get like, Kirk or Jimmy G or something like that, because he's not going to cost you anything, and they're going to be better mentors than what Aaron Rodgers has proven to be. The Raiders, I can't imagine that coaching staff wanting to bring that into the building when you already had a guy that lost the locker room the year before. Like, bringing in Rodgers into a fragile environment already sure seems like everybody gets fired next year.
Hey, it's great cable television to watch.
No, it's not though. Like it was the first year of it, right? But now we're 5 seasons into he's a problem, and now it just feels like lazy story writing, right? You're just like, oh, we're just rehashing the same thing, but people are still watching. Like, get a different heel. get someone else that's a problem, and because I mean, at this point, most people are tired of the Aaron Rodgers drama.
No,
So
I am. I think everybody is.
No, exactly. So I can't imagine that new staff coming in being like, you know what would really make this not work? Let's go get a guy that isn't good anymore, and but a problem in the room. I mean, realistically, I could see the Raiders going and grabbing Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I can see that, but I don't know if Pete Carroll would want to reunite with him though.
I mean, no, but like, if you're talking about a guy that has some prima donna action to him, at least Carroll has the ability to curb some of that. Whereas with Rodgers, it looks like he thinks he's bigger than the sport.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, he just told the Jets organization that he's not going to show up to practices. Like, what part of that says, hell yeah?
I'd like to tell my boss every day that I'm not going to show up to work and still want to get paid for it.
Well, I mean, definitely got to still get paid, right?
Right.
But yeah, no, it's so ridiculous. I can't, as a GM, imagine being like, that's our guy. That guy's going to make our team better when he's not going to show up for OTs or work out with rookies. That seems like it's going to go great.
He's such a team player. He doesn't even want to be here.
That's right. There's no I. Well, there is an I in team. It's in the a-hole. Man. Yeah. Nope. I mean, someone's going to give him a call, but I don't know why. But there was some good stuff that happened, though, outside of Rodgers getting fired by the Jets. We had a pretty entertaining Daytona 500. A lot of action late after a ridiculous rain delay that ended up, they were 11 laps in, and the delay lasted for 3.5 hours.
I made a comment on that last night. I took a lot of flack for it.
What's that?
The 3-hour rain delay was Mother Nature's way of telling Donald Trump to get the hell out of Daytona, because it took him 45 minutes to drive 5 laps around the damn track.
Well, yeah. Well, plus they did 3 flyovers.
I don't mind him being there, but the dumbest thing in the world was letting him take that many laps around the track. Like, the race was already delayed 37 minutes because he announced 2 hours before the race was starting that he was going to show up. So they already delayed the race 37 minutes just so he could get there. And then you want to delay it another 45 minutes because you want to let him drive his limo around the track 5 times. Like, okay, the race is not about you, dude. It is the Daytona 500. You showed up, you said hi, leave.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like it's the first time he's been there, and tons of sitting presidents have gone. So,
yeah, but they've never done what he did with the 5 laps around the track and his private limo or whatever, where the cars are following him. It's just leave already. Get the race started. You showed up, you said hi, you made your point. Now you can go.
Yeah, I mean, like that part was weird. Him getting the radio was dumb, but it is what it is. Whatever. But at least the race was entertaining. Joey Logano was interesting because he had the car to beat. I mean, he could drive to the front all day.
And
Gets impatient.
Kyle Busch's comments were spot on.
No, I mean, he got impatient with 15 to go, which he didn't need to. He could drive by everybody. He won the first stage. He was in the top 10 in the second stage.
And that was with an engine issue too. People
that's what I'm saying.
That he was having an engine issue where he couldn't get above 6,000 RPMs.
He
probably wins second stage too.
They had part of a plastic bag end up blocking restricting the throttle plate, so they actually he couldn't hardly drive it, and then they replace it in a pit stop, and he still drives to the front. And he's sitting he was sitting sixth with 15 to go, and tries to wedge his way in. The block comes down, and then he shoves his nose in and creates the big first wreck. And it just wasn't necessary. I mean, as fast as his car was all day, he had time to pick a better line to try and get through. Now, when you see from his view, it looked like he probably could have got in there. And of course, the 47 shut the door again, and he was just, the nose was there, and it wipes a bunch of cars out. But, again, if it was 5 to go, I get the move, right? Because you're trying to bump your way in, 5 to go, like that's not a lot of time. 15 to go, he would have had another, probably 2 more runs to try and make that work. And then, 5 laps later, another big wreck, car flips over. It was
that one was weird because
he popped a wheelie for
the whole accident was weird because that's the point of the race where you like to get in those lines and you like the cars to push you from behind so you can get that draft and it kind of slingshots you ahead. For whatever reason, Christopher Bell's car could not take a push because he was getting hit barely from behind, and his car started going like this the entire time. And then you look at the bottom end of the track where Denny Hamlin and Austin Cindric they were getting hammered in the back of their car, and their car wasn't even moving. So for whatever reason, Christopher Bell's car couldn't take a bump, and you knew that he was going to spin out eventually. It was just a matter of when it was going to happen and where it was going to happen. And all of a sudden he just spins to the right, hits the wall, sends another car down to the left, and that's what flipped Ryan Preece.
Well, he actually is who hit Preece.
Yeah, because the car hit him. Once he hit the wall, another car hit him, and which is what took him to the left. And then basically just undercut Preece, and Preece went up.
Yeah, no, he spun into that wall and came down, wipes Preece out. And it was just funny because the way Preece's car just stayed in that wheelie was weird because usually it turns the car.
Yeah.
Usually it flips him right over. And for him to be just gliding in that wheelie, which probably felt like forever in the car.
Right.
Before it finally rolled was it was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. And then, Kyle Busch said it head on though with that Joey Logano crash. He basically said Joey Logano was hunting for the accident basically because he said Logano had the fastest car out here. None of us stood a chance if Logano wanted to come to the front. There's nothing we could do about it when you look at how he drove the whole race. And then he just wants to be stupid and overly aggressive and try to put his car in a window that wasn't there. He was hunting for the accident. There's a lot of times where I don't agree with what Kyle Busch says because he likes to run his mouth a lot, but that was spot on. Joey Logano tried to make a hole that wasn't there, tried to force his car into a spot that wasn't there, so he was essentially basically hunting for an accident because he's I have the fastest car. I can do what I want, even though this is not here right now.
Yeah, I mean, some of it falls on the 47 too, because he did get the nose in, so he shouldn't have tried to come down. But still, it was so hyper aggressive for where they were in the race. 15 to go, it's a 2.5 mile oval, so it's not like it's 15 to go and you're in Bristol, right? Because 15 to go in Bristol is 5 to go at Daytona or Talladega. So that's one of those. You got to be situationally aware, and some of that probably the spotters should have been in his ear too. Like, hey, like pick a better spot, right? But yeah, it was hyper aggressive for what still had some time. But yeah, I don't know. It was a fun race though. It was actually a fun race to watch. Albeit it took a long time to finally get rolling. Again, 11 laps in, huge rain delay, which actually worked out because then, I ran some errands and walked my dog, and I was like, I probably missed some of the race. And we get back, and it was like, we came in at lap 26. I was like, oh, nice. I missed 15 laps. That's really not that bad.
I still don't like the stage things that NASCAR does now. Like, I don't understand the point of it. I think the only reason why I think they do it is because those are the laps that most teams pit on anyways. So if most cars are going to pit on
they invert the field. So the biggest thing is it keeps the pack close.
Yeah.
Right. It makes it so that the fastest cars have to work their way back through traffic. So it keeps everybody more together. Whereas when you think back to like the 90s when, NASCAR was actually entertaining is, some of those guys that were towards the back, they were, 5-6 laps down. So they're trying to eliminate some of that. But I mean, for me, NASCAR really started to fall off when they started doing the playoff. The playoff immediately it was just such a rough thing because it used to be that if you were the best car all year, you won a championship. That's what it was supposed to be. Then they go to the playoff situation, which inherently I wouldn't hate. Okay.
Yeah.
Except you can be very average all year, maybe collect a win, right? If you collect a win, you definitely get in there, right?
That's the part I disagree with. Like, I don't mind the whole playoff structure at the end of the year. Like, if you want to take the top 16 drivers, put them in the 8 race thing at the end of the year, that's fine. But take the top 16 points. Don't just give it to somebody that won. Like, we'll use William Byron for an example yesterday because he won the Daytona 500 and he led literally like 4 laps. Don't award somebody an automatic playoff berth because they won the first race of the year because of a freak situation where everybody in front of him crashed on the last lap and he was able to get through the accident. He could finish towards the bottom of the pack the rest of the season, have a bunch of DNFs, and basically do nothing the rest of the season. But because he won that first race, he's essentially taking a playoff spot away from somebody else that's earned it by finishing in the top 10 most of the year. Like, that's what I hate.
So my biggest thing with the playoff is to win a championship, you're supposed to be the best all season, right? And so you look at a guy like Jimmy Johnson who really benefited from the playoff situation. It's the same 6 or 7 tracks at the end of the year. So you can be okay all season. If you can just get in and you're good at those last few tracks, you can win a championship. Like, you don't have to be the best driver.
That's the one thing too that I wish they would do is every year the last 8 races are basically your playoff. Those are the last 8 races.
They are. 100%. That's what they
are. The last 5 tracks are always the same every single year. The first 3 tracks when the playoff starts often changes just because it's just depending on where the season ends up. But if you're going to do this, you should change up the last 8 tracks or at least change the order. If you want to keep the last 8 tracks the same, that's fine. But don't put the same 5 tracks as the last 5. Put like one of those at week 8, one of those at week 6, and like mix it up a little bit. But I will say that last year's playoffs, 13 of the 16 drivers that qualified for the playoffs were actually in the top 15 in points. So last year it actually worked out where if you didn't have the win to automatically get in, most of those drivers would have got in anyways. There was 3 drivers. There was all 16 of the drivers were still in the top 20 like throughout the year. So it's not like a driver that didn't deserve to get in there got in there. It's just the fact that 3 of the drivers had their 1 win to automatically get in, but then the other 13 earned it basically based off of wins and points. So like last year was actually the first year that the system started where it was pretty much set up the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah, but they've been doing the playoffs now for 18 years,
and usually you have like 5 drivers. I think what year was it? The year that Jimmy Johnson retired was that 20. 21, I think, was when
Okay.
he retired.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That year, the 2021 playoff, 5 of the 16 drivers that qualified for the playoffs were in the top 15 in points. The other 11 literally got in because they won
Because
one
they won.
race during the year. Otherwise, they would have finished between like 25 and 35 in points just because it was such a top-heavy field that year where you had 3 drivers won like a combined 13 races between the 3 of them. Another couple of drivers run like 4 or 5 more. But then you had a bunch of other drivers that had one win to
Mhm.
qualify in. And I was like, well, this is kind of stupid.
Well, not just that. I mean, when you think back to when Jeff Gordon retired, he had a year that season, and he got wrecked in the playoff. But if it would have been off points, he'd have won.
Yeah, because that was the year that
Dominated that season.
that was the year that Jeff Gordon had like one win. He had one win the whole season, but he had I think 18 top 10 finishes. He had like another 12 top 5 finishes. It was like every race he was in the top 5, pretty much top 10 the entire time, just banking all these points. He had the one win, but it's like the guy dominated pretty much every track to finish in the top 10 every single race.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely kills, and that's why I hate the playoff situation for NASCAR, because it's just like you're really tailoring it for 4 or 5 guys to win,
mm-hmm.
because it all of a sudden makes the rest of the season not really matter, and the point system really doesn't matter anymore. Basically, they're just like, yeah, you have to win, and if there's not enough winners, then we'll use points, and it's just like, well, that's dumb. And I'm here with when. Like after Earnhardt died and then they started doing the playoff, that's really where my interest started to fall off. Earnhardt dying didn't kill it for me, just because it was you still had a lot of dominant guys. Some of the older guys were still around. But then as soon as they started implementing the playoff, I was just like, man, this is rough. And then they add the stage racing, which makes it more like low-level racing now, right? Like now that it's stage racing, it's basically what you watch at any of your local tracks. So what's the point of watching it on TV? You just go to your local tracks and, enjoy some live racing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are changes that are going to come in the next couple of years. I think NASCAR is debating on making a change where they're not going to reward somebody that wins, just because they're running into that situation now where it doesn't happen every year, but they're still running into the situation where there's 2 or 3 drivers that make the playoffs solely because they won the one race. But you take that one race away, they don't perform well enough over the next 27 races to earn enough points to make the playoffs. And ultimately, they want the 16 best drivers in the playoffs. That's why it was created. So whether you win a race or not, you could go the entire season without winning a race, but if you're consistently finishing right around the top 10, you're going to accumulate enough points to be in the playoffs at the end of the year. And that's ultimately what they want, because all of a sudden now you get into the playoffs, 1 or 2 good races in the playoffs, and you could win the actual playoff, just because if you have 2 top 5 finishes in the playoffs, that could be the difference between first place and 5th place.
No, and that's my point. That's why the point system is the way that it made the most sense before they did the playoffs. Is it's like you're supposed to win a championship. You're supposed to be the most consistent driver out there. Like you can win a championship and not win a race.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the idea behind the points.
Because I think you get like 1 point for every lap you lead during the year. You get, I believe, 10 points for a stage win.
Yeah, each stage win, and you get points for winning. And of course, the way that it used to be is you'd get a point for leading a lap. You'd get points if you were leading at the halfway mark, and then your finish points were based on position. Yeah. And so as each position went down, you got less points. And then DNF, you got 0 points, so some of those things were there, but it's evolved into something that is frustrating to watch.
Yeah. Cause I mean, yeah, it's still the same in terms of like, you still get the 1 point for leading a lap. You still get, like I said, I think it's 10 points for every stage win, but now if you win, I don't know what the winning doesn't matter at this point, because you could be 31st, you could be dead last the entire race, not get any points basically, and all of a sudden you win the race, and now you end up with 30, 40 points just because you won that race versus a guy like Joey Logano could lead 40, 50 laps, win 2 stages, and you finish with more points than he did for the day just because you passed all the cars on your last lap because of a crash.
Well, and the biggest thing is the points, it's basically whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter because all you have to do is get a W, and that's it. You're in the playoff.
That's why I kind of wonder what would happen. Like, they always say, like, you need that one win to qualify. There's, 36 races, I think, in a season, or 34, something like that. So
36, I think.
So
and it changed.
Yeah, so the top 28 are the regular season, and then the last 8 are the playoffs.
Yep.
What if you had 28 drivers that won, and you had a different driver that won each week?
Well,
how would you determine that? Would you then go to the 16, like the next 16
then it would
drivers?
Be points, right?
That's why I want something like that to happen, where you have a situation
well,
where
then it comes down to points.
Because then they'd be like, oh, maybe we should just stick with the top 16 points because we had 16 different drivers win, but then we had these 16 were ones that were consistently finishing around the top at least.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, them changing the playoff to now there's stages of the playoff.
Yeah. Top, right? You go from the round of 16 to the round of 12 after the first 2 races, and then you do 2 more, you go to the round of 8, 2 more to the round of 4, and then the last 3 races or whatever, the final 4.
Yeah, that again, like if you want to have the top 16, that's fine, but let them battle it all the way through. Basically getting eliminated because somebody dumps you into the wall on one of the races seems like a really bad way to go.
And the same scenario where, like, if you win that first race of the playoffs, you automatically go to the next round. And you could crash out the next 4 races, and you're still going to be in the running to get to the top 4 because you won that first playoff race.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of the way that they've changed the sport. It's still fun to watch. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's an entertaining watch, but the playoff thing just is immediately a killer. So hopefully they do change it. I mean, unfortunately, all we've seen from them is like compounding bad decisions. So, I mean, they've made a playoff system that people didn't really love and then have continued to make it worse. Mm-hmm. And it's why their viewership has dropped so much. Sponsorships have dropped so much. They need to figure out how to revive this sport because it is nowhere near the popularity that it had like in the 90s.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that too has to do with there's less tracks. Because you look at how many tracks now they're going to twice a year. You have Daytona twice a year, Atlanta twice a year, Talladega twice a year. You have a lot of the tracks down south and even out west that you're going to twice a year.
Yep.
And you've kind of eliminated a lot of the Midwest tracks, like Chicagoland Speedway. They don't have their race anymore because you got rid of that. I think Kansas is done now. Kansas didn't have the race in Kansas last year. Like, you're going to these same tracks twice a year.
They're not doing Dover every year. I don't think.
Like you had like so many more options where, yes, I understand some tracks you're going to have to go to twice just because there's not enough NASCAR tracks in the country where you can go to like one track every single week.
So there is though. There actually is enough tracks. I mean, they've just eliminated so many, right? Like they don't do Dover, they don't do the Rock, they don't do Sears Point.
Well, the Rock, I don't even think the Rock's a track anymore. I don't
think it is because
ongoing.
Yeah, but that was because NASCAR moved on from it.
Yeah.
And then that was the only thing that was really keeping Rockingham alive. But I mean, when you look at how many tracks that they've abandoned, there was plenty of tracks. So that wasn't really the issue. In fact, they're trying to put one here in Washington. They've been trying to build a full-size NASCAR track here for a decade. And, it just has a really rough time getting through legislation, but they've been trying to do it. So it's not for a lack of tracks, but it's where they're getting money. Honestly, that's what it is. It's just where they're getting money.
There's outside Daytona this weekend. There was another big event that happened, and it was awesome.
Yeah, you're talking about the four nation hockey.
Holy heck, was Canada and U.S. awesome! I don't know if you watched any of that.
I just saw highlights of it. I did like the sub chat. I did like the battle.
There was literally 4 fights in the first 45 seconds. It was freaking awesome. And now they're probably going to meet again on Thursday. It's going to be great.
Yep. Oh, I mean, they're definitely going to meet again.
Because US automatically qualifies because they're going to end up with the most points regardless what happens to them tonight. I mean, even if they lose to Sweden tonight, they're going to have the most points in the out of the 4 nations, so they're automatically in the championship. And Canada's probably going to take their anger out on Finland a little bit, so that they'll probably end up with 5 points or whatever they'll end up with, and then U.S. versus Canada, round 2 for the championship. That game is going to be very chippy.
Yes, that is an understatement.
And I think that's the biggest fear that a lot of these NHL teams have heading into that game, where like this would typically be the All-Star game, and during the All-Star game, players aren't going to give 100%. Players are going to risk like checking each other just because it's the All-Star game. You don't want people to get hurt in the All-Star game. You just want to get through All-Star week and get into the season healthy.
No, but this has bragging rights.
This has bragging rights. This has 2 countries that hate each other, and it's going to get to the point where even if it's your teammate on the other end, you're going to light them up if you have a chance. And if they get hurt, it's going to be like, well, it is what it is. This is more than just a regular game on Thursday.
That's right. Buckle that chin strap.
Like if it was like Finland versus Canada or like Sweden versus US for the championship, it wouldn't have as much hype behind it just because we're not rivals with Finland. We're not rivals with Sweden. So I could see that game being a lot more relaxed where, yes, there's going to be hitting. Yes, there's going to be checking, but it might be like a 60% check just because it's like, oh, I'm going to hit you just to make a point. But like,
no, I don't think so. And the only reason I say that is this is the first one, right? So everyone's coming to play. Like they want to get that first trophy.
Well, I guess I should have clarified that. Like, you're gonna have teammate. Like, if you have a teammate of yours playing on Sweden and you're on Canada, you're not gonna go 100% and like level your teammate. Like, you might like hit him enough where you'll knock him off the puck. But I don't like in like Canada and US. Like, if you're
disagree with that. I disagree with that. I like if it were me out there, I would approach it the same way Kobe did in the All-Star game. It's like I'm coming, or in the Olympics, I mean. It's like I'm coming right through you. I don't care that we're teammates. We are not today.
Yeah, that US Canada game on Thursday, there's gonna be a lot of fights. There's gonna be some hitting.
Yeah. No, that's I mean that'll be a good one. I guess we can spend 2 minutes talking about the NBA AllStar trash that they put together. Like, they found a way to make their All-Star game worse, which is amazing, because last year there was over 400 points scored, which is ridiculous.
No,
and now they made it this gimmicky, unwatchable garbage. It's yeah, I mean it's gimmicky, unwatchable, just can't do it.
I will say I do like the point that Giannis made, and I'm going to be very interested to see if the NBA adopts it next year. Because you have the 4 nations face-off going on, obviously, for the NHL right now. Giannis made a point after the game in his press conference that he would like to see either a straight.
We can't talk about this, Rob.
Like he made it a point. He made it a point to basically say he hopes there is like a U.S. versus a world game next year in the All-Star game, or do something similar to what hockey's doing, where you have like U.S. versus Team Canada, and then like Team Europe versus Team Europe versus like Team South America or something, like create something like that.
I could get into. So here's the thing: is these All-Star games, soon as nobody took it seriously, basically soon as no one wanted to play defense in any of them anymore, like the only one that actually works today is baseball. Because there's just not a way to not play defense in baseball. Right?
And even baseball kind of ruined it a little bit too, because as much as I hated when the winner of the All-Star game got home field in the World Series, because you could be an 83 win team getting home field in the World Series over a 101 win team, because you're like, that's why I liked it, because it forced the teams in the All-Star game to actually play it like a regular baseball game, knowing that there was an incentive added to it for the end of the year.
They still do. Like, they still play it like a normal baseball game, because there's just not a way to not play defense.
But like when you look at how they managed it back then, like they did manage it a little bit different when home field was on the line. Like they treated it like, oh, we have the lead in the seventh inning. I'm bringing in this guy to pitch the eighth. I'm bringing in this guy to pitch the ninth. Now it's like, yes, you still play it like a regular game, but you might not go to your best pitcher in the ninth inning. You might just throw him in the sixth inning just because you want him to pitch in the sixth inning, and then you do whatever you want in the seventh, eighth, and ninth. But like back then, it's like, we have to treat this like Game 7 of the World Series because there is incentives that come later in the season for teams that make the playoffs.
Yeah, well, and I liked that scenario. Like
I did too. Like I hated it at first just because when the National League ended up winning the All-Star game, I think in 2011, which was the first year that they went to the home field thing. Mm-hmm. Cardinals went 83-79 that year. Texas Rangers went 95-67. St. Louis got home field in the World Series because the National League won the All-Star game. St. Louis ended up winning the World Series in 7 games that year because they got those last 2 games at home. So that was like, but I was like, I didn't like that, but at the same time, I did a couple of years later because just like they're actually taking the All-Star game serious because of the incentive added to it.
Well, and when you watch the All-Star games now, it's the only one that's even watchable because basketball. I mean, before this BS that happened over the weekend. I mean, last year's was absolutely terrible. And when you look at football, it's literally a flag football game. They're not even playing football anymore. Like it's ridiculous.
And up until this year, the NHL was the same thing. It was just a bunch of people getting a hockey puck, not even trying to touch the person and let them fling it.
Exactly. And so that's where this Four Nations thing comes together. And so now it's taken more seriously. And I don't know. I mean, at this point, you should almost just get rid of the All-Star games because nobody wants to play in it. And they've made the product so unwatchable because of it. I mean, for football, as soon as it wasn't in Hawaii anymore, like it started to really fall apart.
The one thing I will say about this NBA All-Star, well, not really All-Star game, but All-Star weekend. Yeah. Mac McClung is single-handedly trying to save the damn dunk contest on his own.
Yeah, he's the only one that's even trying.
Like, I mean, Stephen Castle had a couple nice dunks against him in the finals, but, like, the last 3 years, like, the dunk contest was dead, and then you bring in a white guy who can jump, and now he's single-handedly trying to save it on his own, and now it doesn't look like he's going to come back. But his comment was, well, if the NBA wants me back bad enough, I'll consider coming back. I'm like, they're going to want you back bad enough because you're the only one that's making it worth watching right now. So they're going to call you every single year to keep coming back.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only one that was even trying. Like, that's the thing, is it's just like none of the players care about the All-Star games in any of the sports. And so it's just like, what is the point? Because they've made the product so bad that even if you switch over to it on accident, you're just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go cut grass.
This is why it was an accident. I didn't mean to watch this. Let's see what else is on for the next 3 hours.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're just like, going back to reruns of Law and Order. You're just like, oh yeah, I mean,
Hey, that's exactly why the Daytona 500 definitely hurt the NBA All-Star game this weekend because of how late the race started. The freaking ratings killed the All-Star game this weekend because they were all watching the race at that same time.
Yeah. I mean, they were hoping that the race was going to start on time for sure.
Because it would have been done an hour before the All-Star, or 2 hours before the All-Star game would have started. But now you literally had the bulk of the race during the All-Star game, and the ratings were killed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people are actually going to watch that garbage anyway, but it, I looked at a couple of highlights on my phone. I wasn't even going to change the channel away from the race, but I was just saying Law and Order was better than the All-Star game.
Hey, Law and Order is a good show. I don't know what.
Honestly, I think a root canal would probably be right there with the All-Star game.
I won't go that far. Law and Order is a good show, but geez.
Man. Yeah. Well, I mean, fortunately, they're probably not going to do that again next year for the NBA. They're probably going to do something else. Hopefully they do what you're talking about, where it's US versus the world or something like that, something to make it so that people actually want to play in it. I mean, the NBA is hilarious anyway. You can't hardly get those guys to play the regular season games, which is why they started doing the, in-season tournament gimmicky stuff. Like they've, if you're paying a guy $80 million a year, I feel like they should be able to show up to work kind of every day. But, that's just me. That's just me. That being said, that does get us to the top of the hour. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you, and would push me over the top for 900 subscribers, sitting at $8.99. So if somebody wants to drop that sub, that would be huge. If you're on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Otherwise, we are going to get out of here. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports.